What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Super excited. I'll be honest. I love sitting down and doing interviews because me and Matt have just been sitting, getting to know each other. Funny enough, he's got roots in Utah. We're Utahns at the end of the day, so I'm excited to have Matt Tippets on the show, Chief Product Officer over at TotalExpert. And I'm going to be honest, Matt, you and Joe did an incredible job. There were some tech difficulties during a tech presentation, and you guys Joe and you just roll with the punches. You know, you're like, you know what? It is what it is. We're going to deal with it. So huge kudos to you guys for the professionals that you are. But today we get to take a few minutes and we actually get to talk about the things that you guys were going to share on there.
Right.
So let's kind of dive into it because TotalExpert, there's so many things when it comes to the customer journey, helping the originator, helping the community, the mortgage community continue to thrive, continue to grow, and continue to, again, help the consumer because that's what it is at the end of the day. We're really focused on the consumer, but it is a journey. And I love how you guys talk about this. We heard Joe talk about it a little bit earlier, but this is a journey that the home buyer is going on, whether they're buying a new home. It's a huge journey. There's a lot of unknowns, and that's why having a company like TotalExpert that can help us as the origination, can help us as originators, loan officers. It really is great to know that we have a partner, that we have somebody that we can rely on, have a tool and a resource that really does help us with that journey. But let's talk about that. What is TotalExpert when it comes to that journey? What is different? How do they actually help with that journey?
Yeah, so it's probably worth taking one step back because I started at TotalExpert just last summer.
Yeah.
And prior to that, I was also with a big technology company, and we did do things around the customer lifecycle. But a lot of it was focused on, as I put it, buying the next TV or buying the next T-shirt. Very, very retail oriented, right? And one of the reasons I came to TotalExpert is because I wanted to make sure that the software that I was building as Chief Product Officer in this case is doing something that actually feels valuable to people's lives beyond the companies making money using our software, something that's valuable in people's lives. So you think about the experience, and just so happens that we went through this last summer after moving to TotalExpert. You think about that experience of getting a mortgage. And in the industry, I think we probably trivialize it a little bit with regard to how significant 100%. That decision is and the amount of, and certainly there's value in home ownership, but it's still debt, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's still a good deal of debt. So being able to support consumers on that path, as well as other verticals in financial services, was intriguing to me. So bringing that up to speed today, one of the things that we were talking about there at the demo was the fact that if we're going to grow as businesses, as lenders, we're going to have to figure out a way to stand apart from the crowd, right? As a consumer, I certainly know personally that loyalty to my lender is not necessarily a thing yet. Yeah, it's not necessarily something that lenders have focused on. So if we really want to have customers for life, we're going to have to stand apart, not via rates, not by having the easiest servicing site to put my auto payment in, right? But by the experience that I provide them, the education that I provide them. So that's where we were starting with the demo, to give people that sense that this is really important. If you really are going to stand apart and grow as a business, you're going to have to do it with loyal customers, and you're only going to get loyal customers if you provide great experiences.
And that is the experience part of it is one of those things, and that's why this is such a game changer, and that's why TotalExpert continues to grow and continues to innovate in the ways that they do. But I have to ask, how was your experience when you went through your process last year? You said when you
it was just last August. I would say that the time before that we had been through it, we were new construction. So I think everything's a little bit easier with new construction. Everything is sort of tuned for you to get the house and get the appraisal and get everything in place. So this was not that. So I would say that the best thing that they did is we kind of stressed them out with our closing date. We said, we have to close on this day. We're going to be out. We're going to be out of Indiana. We're going to be here. We have to close.
Have to be here.
And there was a little complexity also to the products that we were working with in our loan. So I would say kudos to them for keeping up. Yeah, kudos to them for keeping up with everything that we were trying to do. But there was definitely some complexity in that I think a little more education could have helped with. I know we get a series of suggestions on the products we might combine to get the loan done, and you had magnifying glass with the small print, and and also just some terminology and just a lot of variation. So definitely, it's a place where more coaching and more education is useful, even for those of us who work adjacent to it.
I say who do it every single day. Now, this is interesting because when it comes to the complexity of it, and when it comes to this experience, again, that's something that you guys do so well at TotalExpert. And I'm sure that's what you guys are going to talk about, is simplifying that experience, because again, it is, no matter if we're in it every single day, sometimes I do think we forget that we see situations like yours,
Right.
they may be a little bit complex,
Right.
but we're just so like, oh, that's just part of the routine. This is the everyday.
Yep.
We forget. But I think that education part that you mentioned, that is critical when it comes to that experience, right?
So at every moment of that part of the journey, so in reality, pardon me to wax philosophical about journeys, in reality, your relationship to any brand, and in this case we're talking about lenders, you only have one journey with that brand.
It's true.
From the moment you're introduced to them, and maybe you ignore them forever, and so that's the end of your journey, but from the moment you've been introduced to them to the moment forever, you now have one journey with that brand.
Sure.
So with this little vignette of the journey, I think what's really important is watching for the moments of truth, as we talk about. The signals are the important aspects of that stage of the journey that we should be watching out for. So the easiest one might be the status process when the loan is in process, rather, right?
Yeah.
And making sure all of the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, all my documentation's in place. But in addition to that, afterwards, what are the moments afterwards? Do I have everything set up with servicing? Do I have all my payments set up? What are the different signals that we can lean on? And so that's what part of our demo was the fact that with our Journeys product, you can listen to all of these signals built directly into the platform to say, hey, when this thing occurs, then we need to take step X, Y, and Z. And step X, Y, and Z after this has occurred. And so we could let's say the loan's funded.
Sure.
We're going to go to a post-close journey.
Perfect.
So the loan funded is a signal, and we pick up that and we automate the process to say, okay, the consumer should see these educational materials about things like what happens now, right? They should get those emails automated. The loan officer should get some tasks assigned to them saying, hey, could you please follow up with this consumer in 5 days to make sure they're comfortable and to see if they have any questions? Those moments of truth, like a loan funded, you need to build off of those.
Absolutely.
If you only see it as a transaction, then the customer is going to see you as a transaction as well.
Well, I think that's just it. Sometimes we talk about this so frequently in the industry, but very few people execute on it, is actually being able to make our consumers, make the clients feel like they're humans, which is like, whoa, like imagine that. They're actually people. This home that they're buying, there's a reason, whether they're relocating for work, whether they're going up to a new house or whatever it may be. We get so transactional, and like you said, because sometimes we're dealing with the issues, trying to meet deadlines, trying to, deal with a tricky loan. We get so caught up in those details, we forget about the human aspect of it. But that's, again, where TotalExpert kind of separates and differentiates with it, because it helps us like, hey, all right, here, Josh, take a step back. We need to reach out to Matt. We need to make sure, again, because that experience, even if you think, if what I perceived, and again, another problem of our industry, sometimes what I perceived of the transaction went well, maybe you didn't.
Exactly. If on my end, I have all the back office things done, I'm like, yeah, cha-ching, we got another one, right? But on the other side of it, you have a very stressed, typically you have a very stressed out consumer who's making a move of some point. Refi is probably maybe a little bit easier than last year. Became a little more business as usual for consumers. But it's just the empathy side of it. And I know businesses have talked a lot more about empathy given the pandemic, but it always should have been there.
Always.
There should always be a focus of a loan officer and lenders on empathy for their consumers and what they're actually doing with and for those consumers. And we try to do that from the beginning of the relationship. So another item of the demo was really about what do we do when we first learn of someone, or as we like to say, get a lead.
Lead gen. Yep.
And even there, it's emblematic of we call these people who are humans looking to do something, we just call them leads. Right? That's all they are.
That's it.
How many leads do I have? How many leads am I converting? It's leads. So what we've tried to do is humanize even that experience. So from the moment that we're introduced to an individual, and I will use the term lead because everyone understands that term. From the moment we're introduced to a lead, our goal is immediately to match them up with the person best suited to support them.
Sure.
So it could be the products they're interested in. It could be where they live. In software we would call it skills-based routing. But effectively, it's the skills of the loan officer to best support the consumer.
Exactly.
So we get a lead, and we're trying to direct them to the best person possible. And so in the demo, we have a very visual decision tree, effectively. So the entire organization can lay out their lead distribution rules and ensure that it's fair for their loan officers, but also that it's fair for the customer. And by that, we really mean making sure the customer is getting the help and support they need with someone who's not going to just pass them off to a different loan officer because, wrong fit. Sorry, I can't handle this type of loan, so I'm going to shove you over here. No, you got to be listening from the beginning. And every bit of data, every bit of information that consumer is giving you is something they expect you to leverage, right?
Absolutely.
If they are explicitly giving you information,
Right.
they expect you to understand what that information is and how you can best help them. So that's a part of our lead distribution. We want from the moment you're introduced to them to be a humanized experience, and that's where you start to build the customer for life journey.
Well, and it creates that loyalty. Joe,
Right.
Joe mentioned this. You kind of mentioned it here. Is creating that loyalty with that consumer, listening from the very beginning, not just making them a lead. And that is almost something as leaders, as you guys continue to do so incredibly with TotalExpert, is you continue to start to turn that narrative. Like, hey, I know we call them leads, but we shouldn't actually be designated human beings as leads.
Remember, these are people.
These are people. And at the end of the day, like, even if we're referring to them as leads, like, that's not creating that loyalty. If my friends knew that we were calling them leads, they'd be like, what?
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. It's and I should. Hopefully this doesn't come across as too critical. It's just about creating a mindset. Right?
Sure.
It's about creating a mindset, and for us providing technology to help you advance that mindset, where these are people trying to make decisions in their financial life, decisions with their home, decision with their refinancing their mortgage. They're making real legitimate decisions.
Of course.
And the more that we can educate and honestly help them, then you're going to the net result's going to be loyalty, right?
Yeah. And that's what we all hope for.
Because the consumer knows that you care about them. Right. And if you don't give them a sense that you care about them, they're not going to care about you.
Yeah. Well, and that's just it when it comes to the end of the day. If they feel that, and I think that's, we talk about retention in this industry as well, because retention is such a big part of it. 1 in 5 is
somewhere in that 15 to 25% range.
Somewhere in that range.
Yep.
And it's just like, it's baffling to me because I go back and think of my days in origination. And I'm like, man, like I can't. 1 in 5 people that I work so hard. I build this relationship. The blood, sweat, and tears, like you said, that go into loans.
Yeah.
And then if we're not creating that loyalty, if we're not letting the people know that we care, like it's lost at the end of the day.
And then think of the other side of the coin as we talk about both the originators and the consumers, right? So 1 in 5, that means that the biggest, I'm generalizing,
sure,
the biggest financial decision of someone's life to that stage, they didn't care about the company who made them help them make it, right?
Wow.
4 of them maybe don't even think of the lender the next time they have an event like that, right? So when you think about the importance of the decision and the importance of that financial transaction and how poor the retention rate is, something's wrong. I think it's just another indicator that the industry is a little bit more focused on the transaction than the person.
Sure. Which kind of actually, this segues into the last part of what you guys were talking about, is the customer intelligence side of understanding the consumer and understanding what really drives them, what is important to them. So let's talk about this last piece that you guys want to talk about, and I'm excited to kind of get into this kind of wraps everything together here, is the customer intelligence piece with TotalExpert.
Yeah, so after that first loan closes and maybe we sell the loan off to somebody to service it, whatever happens, right? But you still have a relationship with that customer and you still have all of the information about their loan. And like we've talked about, the lack of retention is endemic in the industry. So what can we do about that, right? How do we continue to pay attention to what customers need? And that's where we have this term customer intelligence. There are certainly things going on in people's lives that, as their original lender, that we can be privy to.
Sure.
So, for instance, in the refi boom, people are checking their credit to see what they qualify for, and that information is available to us as lenders. In addition to that, we have an idea of their servicing situation and their home value, and we have their loan value. And so now we know, hey, this person might have built up 30-40% equity in their home. Maybe it's time for me to come in, now that I've gained that information from data I already have about customers, come in and say, hey, there's some valuable equity in your home. Let's just talk with you about options. Not that they need to get a home equity loan, but just to become an advisor at that stage. Maybe even a more obvious one is listing their house, right? They bought this house with you.
Yep.
You were their lender for buying this house, and now they're about to sell it. And what do we do as lenders? We don't pay attention.
No.
So that's another issue about intelligence, right? If we are watching our customers and we're looking for them for when they list their homes, because all of us have access to the appropriate MLS data to do that, then that's intelligence, right? So then it becomes our responsibility to act on that in a way, again, in the best interest of the consumers. If they're listing their home, they're about to go through another stressful period, right?
Exactly. Well, you mentioned such a piece that I think is critical. We hear a few people talking about in the industry, but being more of an advisor.
Yes.
It's not just being a loan officer anymore. It's not just being a mortgage originator anymore. It's being more of a mortgage advisor, looking at these data points, looking at these, life events that are like, hey, you know what? maybe you're, like you said, a credit, maybe a credit pull, or the fact that we have access to MLS data and being able to see, like sometimes we as originators too, it's a mindset that we've created for ourselves is we think it's a real estate agent's job to go like, oh, it's a listing, like, oh, but now we can turn the tables. Again, we can be a valuable resource to our real estate partners, our realtor partners, and be like, hey, man, by the way, like this, I'm going to reach out to, Johnny, and then they've had 30%, additional 30% equity, or their home value's up. Maybe it's time to listen. Like, let's work together. Like, let's make this happen. So if, Johnny is buying a house, or if whoever, as a real estate partner, I can reach out to you and we can actually make it happen. Like, I can say, hey, I want to be a valuable resource, not only to my consumer now, but to my real estate partners. So it's almost double-sided now. I'm being a valuable resource. I'm being educated. You use that word. And I'm actually creating value for the consumer, for my realtor partners, which in essence helps me grow my business, which at the end of the day, let's kind of be honest. That's what we're trying to do.
I know.
Like, we're trying to do that.
Well, this is Adam Smith's invisible hand, right?
Right, exactly.
If we operate with the proper level of self-interest, and I guess that's one of the themes in our conversation is it is in your self-interest as a loan originator, as a loan officer, to build the best relationship you can with your consumer. And I think that all of us can, again, at the risk of generalizing, the most successful loan officers, on the one hand, there's those who are just all about the lead and the transaction and the deal, and they just pump it out, right? On the other hand, I'm sure you can think a lot personally who were really all about the relationship.
Yep.
And they were at least as successful as those who were all about efficient transactions and pushing their team to go, right?
Yep.
And those relationships, I was talking to a loan officer recently, and she was, as everyone had a great 2020, right? She was talking about 2020, she was talking about her organization would buy leads for her, but how she really is just reliant on referrals from her customers. And I think, and she's having a great year again. And
that's awesome.
I think that's just representative of the fact that relationships are very meaningful, and you can take advantage of that. You should take advantage of that by leaning in and helping and educating and supporting. And so customer intelligence is a way to give you a leg up, right?
Well, and I think that is where the industry is going. It's the combination of the two. It's like the relationship and the tech piece, having the systems and the processes in place so you can be more efficient. That's where TotalExpert really bridges that gap. Is because we know that relationship is absolutely critical. But again, having the efficiencies also in place, like that's a win-win.
And that way the loan officers don't really need to pay attention. They need to pay attention when the signal occurs. The credit is pulled, the house is listed. We will push that to them automatically. We'll also push to a customer. Not you can obviously, the tech allows you to configure this.
Sure.
So it's probably not the case that on day one, customer checks their credit. On the evening of day one, lender is saying, hey, I saw you check your credit.
Hey,
that's not what we're talking about.
Right.
We're talking about taking that opportunity to, again, as you mentioned, become an advisor in there. So bringing the intelligence directly into the platform, automating that to put it in front of the loan officer, the initial owner of the loan, as well as putting it back in front of the customer to say, hey, we think this is going on in your life. How can we help you? So if you look at all of that, our goal should be creating customers for life, managing the entire customer journey in a way that remembers the human, remembers what they're dealing with. From the moment that we're introduced to them as a lead, we're doing that in a way that matches them to the person best suited to help them, gets them the information they need about the products that they're interested in, about the place that they live, what they're after in their life cycle. But then it doesn't end at the transaction. That's the beginning of a relationship where you now have the opportunity to leverage customer intelligence, both in an automated way and in a human way, to optimize that relationship and have a customer for life.
And that's the winning. Right? I say that's what we're all hoping for. That's a winning combination. I mean, it's crazy. We could continue just to go with this, but man, this has been such a insightful. And I want all of you to go back and listen to that. There were so many key points that you mentioned here when it comes to this customer for life. And this is, we're hoping, and I know, again, TotalExpert does an incredible job at it, but we need to start shifting the mindset of our industry. And it's conversations like this, it's leaders like yourself that are helping to change that narrative that we need to. We want you as originators. We want to see you guys continue to create that customer for life to build those long-lasting relationships. We hope that your retention isn't just 1 in 5. Like, we hope it continues to get better and better and better. But it's these type of conversations and that mindset shift that from leaders like yourself that's helping everybody. So thank you so much for everything you're willing to share. Thank you for what TotalExpert TotalExpert is doing for helping us as our originator, the mortgage advisor community out there. Guys, take that to heart. There's much more to come, much more I'm excited for this next year for you guys. It's a big year. Lots of exciting things that are coming out. So excited to have the Chief Products Officer tell us. You're going to hear much more from Matt. And we're actually going to have him back on the show here real soon. We're actually going to do the demo for you guys so you can actually see it in person.
Awesome.
It's a lot of fun hanging out. I just say, both of us are built for radio. We know that. We did a great job here, but we're actually going to have Matt on the show. We're actually going to show you guys what the system looks like. So, Matt, look forward to that as well.
Thank you for having me on, and thanks for watching.
Guys, appreciate you. As always, we appreciate you. We love you. Don't forget, it's time for you to shred. Go show up, hustle, repeat every day. See ya.